In a city where wealth and power blind the eyes of many, a quiet corner hides a story that no one expected. A billionaire, known for his pride and control, is about to sit down for an elegant meal. But just as he lifts his fork, a voice breaks the silence. A young homeless boy yells out, "Don't eat that." Everyone turns. Confused. Stunned, what could a ragged street kid possibly know about the food on a billionaire's plate? That one moment, loud, desperate, and completely unexpected, will unravel. The restaurant buzzed with quiet elegance. Crystal glasses clinked, soft music floated through the air, and wealthy elites discussed markets and vacations. At the center table, Mr. Langford, a billionaire investor, sat surrounded by power. With every movement, he radiated confidence. Silverware was laid out like weapons, the food before him looked like art. Outside, beyond the frosted glass windows, a small boy pressed his face against the cold. Dirty, thin, and forgotten. No one noticed him. No. Conversations died. Mr. Langford looked up, brows furrowed in disbelief. "What did you say?" he asked, voice sharp. The boy didn't flinch. "Please. Just don't eat it." His voice cracked, but his eyes stayed. "Because someone poisoned it." A gasp swept through the room. The head chef turned pale. A woman dropped her spoon. "Poisoned?" Langford repeated, half laughing. "Do you even know what's on this plate?" The boy nodded. Truffle steak, saffron rice, and beet puree. The billionaire blinked. He hadn't Eve. The boy looked down. "I worked in the kitchen once. I know the smell. The way it's plated. I saw someone switch the plate. I swear." Langford studied him. "Who switched it?" The boy hesitated. "A man in a gray coat. He paid off the waiter." The waiter turned white. I didn't do anything." But Langford's security team was already moving. The guests murmured, tension thick in the air. Langford slowly set his fork down. The moment was no longer amusing, it was serious. "Take the plate to be tested." "Eli," the boy whispered. "Eli Daniels." Langford nodded. "Well, Eli Daniels. You just might have saved my life." Eli looked confused. "You believe me?" Langford smirked. "I don't trust people easily. But I trust my gut, and it's telling me you didn't come here to lie." Eli glanced around, still breathing heavily, his small frame shaking. "Are they going to arrest me?" he asked. Langford leaned forward. "No. You're not the one in trouble tonight." His gaze shifted to the waiter, now sweating Buell. Security dragged the waiter into the back as Langford stood up from the table. "This dinner's over," he declared, his voice firm. Guests began whispering, some snapping pictures, others hurrying to pay and leave. Eli stood frozen, unsure of what to do. Langford looked down at him. "Come on. You're with me now." Eli blinked. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere safer than here." The limo ride was silent at first. Eli clutched the fabric of the seat, unsure if this was rescue or arrest. Langford final. Langford noticed the silence and didn't push further. He watched Eli from the corner of his eye, how he stared out the window like he didn't belong in this world. "You hungry?" Langford finally asked. Eli nodded, cautiously. "Good," Langford said, tapping the intercom. "Take us home." The limo pulled into a towering mansion, gates slowly opening like jaws. Eli's eyes widened. "This is your house?" Langford nodded. "It's a place with too many rooms and not enough people." Inside, staff scrambled tea. The kitchen smelled of grilled chicken and fresh bread. Eli sat stiffly at the table, unsure if he should touch anything. Langford watched him for a moment, then slid a plate over. You saved my life, kid. The least I can do is feed you. Eli hesitated, then dug in, fast, like someone used to sharing scraps with rats. Langford's voice softened. You've been on the streets long? Eli paused mid-bite. 2 years. Since Mom died. Dad left before that. Langford said nothing at first. He just poured. Eli wiped his mouth with his sleeve. I used to live in Eastwood. Before we lost the apartment. I tried staying with neighbors, but... His voice trailed off. Langford leaned back. Ever been in trouble? Eli shook his head. Just hungry. I clean car windows. Beg, sometimes. Nothing bad. Langford tapped his fingers on the table. And how did you know about poison? Eli looked up. The smell. It was bitter, wrong. Like when rats die in the alley. Langford raised a brow. You've smelled that before. Langford's phone buzzed. He answered. Yes? A voice on the other end reported, Sir, the food sample came back. It was laced with cyanide, lethal dose. Langford's jaw tightened. The waiter? Gone. Disappeared before security reached the holding room. Langford hung up, his face cold. Eli noticed the shift. It was real, wasn't it? Langford nodded. You were right. Eli lowered his eyes. No one ever believes me. Not even the cops. Langford stood and walked to a tall window. They will now. That night, Langford gave Eli a guest room. It was larger than any space Eli had ever slept in. He lay under clean sheets, staring at the ceiling, too alert to sleep. Meanwhile, Langford sat in his private study, flipping through files and watching security footage. Someone had orchestrated a hit, right under his nose. But why? Power? Revenge? Eli, in his innocence, had become tangled in something far bigger. At 2 a.m., Langford made a call. I want background checks on every staff member. NGE. Morning light spilled into the grand guest room, and for the first time in years, Eli woke up in a warm bed. He blinked at the soft sheets, unsure if it was a dream. Downstairs, Langford was already in his office, sipping black coffee, eyes locked on a paused frame of security footage. There, a man in a gray coat handing something to the waiter. Langford zoomed in, face tightening. Run it through our system, he ordered his assistant. I want a name within the hour. He stood and walked toward T. That night, Langford gave Eli a guest room. It was larger than any space Eli had ever slept in. He lay under clean sheets, staring at the ceiling, too alert to sleep. Meanwhile, Langford sat in his private study, flipping through files and watching security footage. Someone had orchestrated a hit, right under his nose. But why? Power? Revenge? Eli, in his innocence, had become tangled in something far bigger. At 2 a.m., Langford made a call. I want background checks on every staff member. NGE. Langford's eyes narrowed. A scar on his cheek. That's useful. He stood, grabbed a tablet, and pulled up a photo. Is this him? Eli shook his head. Another one. Still no. But on the 5th try, Eli leaned forward. That's him. Langford nodded. Name's Victor Kane. Former employee. Fired for embezzlement years ago. He stared at the screen. Looks like he didn't take it well. Eli whispered, so he tried to kill you? Langford nodded. Or send a message. He looked at Eli. But thanks to you, I. Later that day, Langford brought Eli into a sleek operations room, screens, maps, tracking software. You just stepped into something bigger than either of us, kid. Eli's eyes widened. Is this like spy stuff? Langford chuckled. Let's just say I've made enemies. Big ones. Some would do anything to see me fall. Eli stared at the monitors, overwhelmed but fascinated. So what do we do? Langford handed him a bottle of water. We wait. We watch. And we prepare. On one screen, Victor Kane's FAC. Night fell again, but the house wasn't asleep. Langford's team traced Kane's last known location to a warehouse on the edge of town. No security, low traffic, ideal for planning something shady, one agent reported. Langford looked at Eli. I want you safe. You'll stay here. Eli shook his head. No. I want to help. Langford hesitated. This isn't a game. Eli's voice was steady. I know. But if I hadn't said anything yesterday, you'd be dead. You said I see what others don't. So let me help. Langford's team suited up. Black SUVs idled outside the mansion, engines humming. Eli watched nervously from the doorway as Langford slipped on a bulletproof vest. Stay close. Don't speak unless I say, Langford instructed. Eli nodded firmly. The warehouse loomed ahead, rusted gates, flickering lights. As they pulled in, Langford's voice cut through the comms, no mistakes. Kane's dangerous. The team moved fast, clearing corners. Then, movement. A figure darted behind a stack of crates. Eli's BR. Kane bolted through the shadows, knocking over barrels. The team chased him down tight corridors. Eli stayed in the SUV, heart pounding. Then a sharp bang echoed through the warehouse, followed by shouting. Got him! A voice yelled. Minutes later, Kane was dragged out, cuffed and cursing. Langford approached him slowly. Trying to poison me, Victor? That's how low you've sunk? Kane spat. You took everything from me. Langford didn't flinch. You did that to yourself. As Kane was taken away, Back at the mansion, Eli couldn't sit still. The night's events raced through his head. Langford walked in and sat beside him. You okay? Eli nodded slowly. I didn't know it would feel like this. Langford smiled faintly. Like what? Like I matter. That sentence hit harder than any bullet. Langford leaned back, staring at the ceiling. You do, Eli. More than you know. For the first time, the billionaire wasn't talking like a CEO or a man used to power, just a human being. He added, maybe I. The next morning, Eli was given new clothes, simple but clean. He twirled in front of a mirror, barely recognizing himself. Downstairs, Langford was on a call. Yes. File the charges. I want Kane prosecuted to the fullest extent. He hung up and noticed Eli. You look sharp, he said with a grin. Eli smiled shyly. Still not used to all this. Langford nodded. Takes time. He placed a hand on Eli's shoulder. I've been thinking. You can't live on the streets anymore. It's time you had a real home. Eli sat on the edge of the sofa, heart racing. You want me to live here? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Langford nodded. This house has been empty too long. You gave it life again. Tears welled up in Eli's eyes. No one had ever said anything like that to him before. What if I mess it up? He asked. Langford chuckled. You already saved my life, kid. That buys you a few mistakes. The room fell silent for a moment, then Eli ran over and hugged him tight. Langford froze, surprised. Then. The following days felt like a dream to Eli. He had a room of his own, 3 meals a day, and, most shocking of all, someone who actually cared. Langford enrolled him in tutoring sessions, hired a private teacher, and even got him new books and a laptop. "You're smart, Eli. Just needed the tools," he'd say. Eli soaked it all in, hungry not just for food now, but for knowledge, for purpose. But even as things settled, a question lingered in his heart. Why had Langford really brought him in? Was it G? One evening, as they played chess by the fireplace, Eli finally asked, "Why me?" Langford paused, staring at the board. "You mean why did I take you in?" Eli nodded. Langford leaned back. "Because when the world saw a homeless kid, I saw a mirror. I didn't grow up rich. My father left. My mom worked 3 jobs. I fought to get out, but I forgot where I came from." He looked Eli in the eye. "You reminded me." Eli was silent, absorbing the truth. "So you weren't always rich?" Langford chuckled. As weeks passed, the bond between them grew. Langford began introducing Eli to people, not as a charity case, but as someone important. "This is Eli Daniels," he'd say proudly. "He's part of my family now." Some raised brows, others smiled politely. Eli noticed everything. At one gala, a guest whispered, "Is that the street kid?" Eli shrunk inside, but Langford overheard. "That street kid saved my life. What have you done lately?" The room fell silent. Eli looked up, stunned. In that moment, Eli was already awake, standing near the window when Langford walked in. "Sleep okay?" he asked. Eli nodded slowly. "It's quiet here." Langford smiled faintly. "Most rich places are. Silence can be lonely, too." They moved to the breakfast room where a spread waited, pancakes, eggs, fruit. Eli looked overwhelmed. "Eat," Langford encouraged. "You earned it." As Eli began eating, Langford sat across from him. "Listen, kid. I need your help. I'm trying to find the man in the gray coat. You said you." The next morning, Langford had a surprise. He led Eli to the garage and uncovered something wrapped in a silver sheet. "What is it?" Eli asked. Langford smiled. "Something for your future." He pulled the sheet off to reveal a brand new bicycle. Eli gasped. "You got me a bike?" Langford nodded. "And not just that. I signed you up for a weekend science program. You start this Saturday." Eli's face lit up. "Science?" Langford grinned. "You said you liked chemistry, right?" Eli nodded eagerly. That Saturday came, and Eli stood nervously outside the community science center. Kids buzzed around in groups, some arriving in luxury cars, others with parents. Eli felt out of place, until he heard Langford's voice behind him. "You've got this." Eli turned, surprised. "You came?" Langford smiled. "Wouldn't miss it." Eli entered the classroom with shaky confidence, but once the experiments began, his eyes lit up. He asked questions. Made observations. One of the instructors whispered, "He's got summit." After the session, Eli couldn't stop talking. "Did you know nitrogen can freeze flowers instantly? Or that magnets can float if balanced right?" Langford laughed. "Slow down, Professor." Eli beamed. For the first time, he felt smart, not just street smart, but truly capable. That night, he worked on a project in his room, a homemade water filter, inspired by something he saw kids doing for fun in class. But to Eli, it wasn't just fun, it was survival. "If I'd had this back then," he muttered, "May." Langford noticed the shift in Eli. He was still the same boy, but now he carried purpose. He's got ambition, Langford told his assistant one day. We need to support that. He arranged a visit to a local tech startup, where engineers showed Eli prototypes and let him try coding for the first time. It's like telling the computer what to do, Eli said in awe. Langford chuckled. Exactly. That night, Eli asked, "Do you think I could maybe be a scientist one day?" Langford didn't hesitate. "I do." Late one evening, Langford received a sealed envelope. He opened it carefully, his expression changing as he read. Eli walked in, sensing the tension. "What's wrong?" Langford looked up. "It's about your mother." Eli froze. "What?" Langford softened. "I had my people look into her case. You said she got sick. But no one ever followed up. Turns out, the housing complex you lived in had lead contamination in the water. A whole cluster of illnesses." Eli's hands shook. "So it wasn't just bad luck?" Eli sat in stunned silence, the weight of truth sinking in. All these years, he thought it was fate. That sickness, suffering, losing his mother, it just happened. But now he knew it had a cause. "Can we do something?" he asked, voice cracking. Langford's expression hardened. "We will. I'm filing a lawsuit against the housing company. They need to answer for what they did." Eli clenched his fists. "For Mom. For the others too." That night, Eli didn't cry, he planned. With Langford by his side, he. News of the lawsuit spread fast. "Billionaire and homeless boy take on housing giant," read one headline. Langford hated the media circus, but Eli. He handled it like a pro. In interviews, he spoke with quiet strength. "People like my mom, no one ever listens to them. But now, they'll have to." Behind the cameras, Langford watched with awe. The boy who once whispered from the shadows was now speaking truth to power. "He's not just a survivor," he told a journalist. "He's a leader in the making." At a press conference, Eli stood beside Langford, wearing a button-down shirt and nerves in his chest. Reporters fired questions, lights flashing. "Do you blame the government?" one asked. Eli paused. "I blame the silence. Everyone who knew and did nothing." That answer went viral. Comments flooded in, some praising, some skeptical. But one thing was clear, Eli's voice couldn't be ignored anymore. That night, Langford took him aside. "You sure you want to keep going? This could get uglier." Eli N. Morning light spilled into the grand guest room, and for the first time in years, Eli woke up in a warm bed. He blinked at the soft sheets, unsure if it was a dream. Downstairs, Langford was already in his office, sipping black coffee, eyes locked on a paused frame of security footage. There, a man in a gray coat handing something to the waiter. Langford zoomed in, face tightening. "Run it through our system," he ordered his assistant. "I want a name within the hour." He stood and walked toward T. The court date was set. Lawyers prepared statements, the media buzzed, and Langford's mansion turned into a hub of legal strategy. But one night, Eli stood alone in the garden, staring at the stars. "Mom. I'm doing it," he whispered. "I'm really doing something." A soft breeze passed, almost like an answer. When he turned, Langford was there. "Big day coming." Eli nodded. "You think they'll listen?" Langford put a hand on his shoulder. "They won't have a choice." That night, Eli didn't sleep fro. The courtroom was packed. Lawyers, families, reporters, all waiting. Eli walked in wearing a simple suit, heart pounding. When the judge called his name to testify, the room went silent. He stepped forward, cleared his throat, and began. "My name is Eli Daniels. I used to sleep on sidewalks and dig through trash for food. I lost my mother because no one cared enough to check the water we drank. His voice wavered, but he stood tall. But today, I'm here because someone finally believed me. And I. Eli's testimony shook the courtroom. Some jurors wiped their eyes. Even the opposing counsel shifted uncomfortably. When he finished, the judge gave him a long look, one of quiet respect. As he stepped down, Langford stood and clapped once. Others followed. Eli returned to his seat, hands trembling, heart racing. "You did good, kid," Langford whispered. "You did more than good." Outside, reporters flooded them, but Langford shielded Eli. "No more questions today," he said firmly. Eli was emotional. The trial lasted a week. Witnesses came forward, doctors, residents, engineers. Internal documents were leaked showing that the housing company had known about the contamination for years. And done nothing. Eli sat through it all, never missing a session. When the CEO took the stand, he tried to deflect blame. "We had no idea the levels were dangerous." Eli muttered under his breath, "Liar." Langford leaned in, "Truth always finds a way out." That night, Eli stared at the courtroom sketch of Hims. On the final day of the trial, the defense made a last attempt to discredit Eli. "How can we trust the word of a boy who lived on the streets?" the lawyer said coldly. Eli stood up before his own attorney could respond. "I may not have had a house, but I always had eyes. And I saw what you ignored." The courtroom went silent again. The judge allowed it. That moment became the headline, "Street Kid Destroys Corporate Defense in Court." Langford put a hand on Eli's back. "You didn't just speak for." The verdict came in, guilty on all counts. The housing company was ordered to pay millions in damages and begin immediate reparations. Families cried. Lawyers embraced. And Eli? He sat frozen for a second, until Langford leaned over and whispered, "You did it." Eli turned to him, stunned. "We did it." Outside the courthouse, a swarm of press waited, but Eli walked out with his head high. "This wasn't just for my mom," he said to the cameras. "This was for every family still waiting for justice." Back at the mansion, the mood was joyful. Staff congratulated Eli. Even the chef made his favorite dessert. But in the quiet of his room, Eli sat by the window and whispered to the night sky, "We won, Mom." He clutched a photo of her, a worn image he kept all these years. Langford knocked gently. "Mind some company?" Eli nodded. They sat in silence for a while. "You changed more than a verdict," Langford said. "You changed me." Eli smiled softly. "You changed me too." It was no longer just a store. The days after the verdict were full of interviews, award invitations, and even scholarship offers. Eli handled it all with quiet grace, but deep down, he missed the simplicity of before, just him and Langford, talking over dinner or riding in the limo in silence. One evening, Langford said, "I've been offered a humanitarian award. But I want you to accept it with me." Eli blinked. "Me?" Langford nodded. "You're the reason I'm getting it." On stage, weeks later, they stood together as the crowd are. Langford surprised Eli one afternoon with a visit to Eastwood, the very block where it all began. The abandoned apartment building stood silent, windows broken, paint peeling. Eli froze at the entrance. "Are we going in?" Langford nodded. "If you're ready." Inside, the memories rushed back. The hallway where he played. The door where his mother used to tape his drawings. He found one still stuck in the frame, faded, torn, but there. A child's scribble of a rocket ship with "One day I'll fly." Eli. After the visit, Eli couldn't sleep. His mind was full of memories and ideas. He walked into Langford's office late that night, holding a notebook. "I've been thinking," he said. "I want to start something. A foundation." Langford raised an eyebrow. "Go on." Eli sat across from him. "To help kids like me, homeless, abandoned, full of potential but no chances. We give them education, support, maybe even a place to stay." Langford leaned forward. "You're not asking for help. You're offering it." Within months, the Eli Daniels Foundation was launched. It gained traction fast, donors lined up, volunteers poured in, and the first outreach center opened in the very neighborhood Eli once begged in. Kids lined up at the doors, greeted by warm meals and patient teachers. Eli visited often, sitting with them, listening, encouraging. "I was you once," he'd say, "and I promise, you're not invisible." Langford watched from afar, his pride unspoken but deep. "He's not just giving back," one staffer said. At the one-year anniversary of the foundation, a celebration was held. Former street kids gave speeches, parents wept, and Eli stood at the center, no longer the lost boy who once shouted across a restaurant, but a young man with purpose. Langford spoke too. "He saved my life with 5 words, don't eat that. But what he's done since has saved hundreds more." The crowd applauded, some crying. Eli looked out at the sea of faces, then up at the sky. "This isn't the end," he said. "This is just WH." The foundation grew beyond anyone's expectations. New centers opened in 3 cities. Eli met with mayors, school boards, and leaders who once would have never returned his calls. But through it all, he stayed grounded. He still helped serve meals on weekends. Still answered letters from kids. And every night, he wrote in a worn journal, his mother's name on the first page. "I tell her everything," he once told Langford. "The good days. The hard ones. The dreams." Langford nodded. "She hears you, E." One morning, Eli walked into Langford's office with an envelope in hand. "What's this?" Langford asked. Eli grinned. "College acceptance." Langford opened it slowly, then beamed. "Full scholarship. Engineering." Eli nodded. "I want to build things that make life better. Safer. Cleaner." Langford stood up and hugged him. "I've never been prouder." It wasn't about wealth or success anymore. It was about purpose. Eli had gone from street corners to courtrooms, from shelters to scholarships. And now, on Eli's last night before college, he and Langford sat on the rooftop, watching the stars. "Nervous?" Langford asked. Eli nodded. "A little. But mostly excited." There was a long pause. Then Eli added, "You saved me too, you know. Not just with food or shelter. But by believing in me when no one else would." Langford smiled, his voice rough. "You didn't need saving. You just needed a chance." They sat in silence for a while, 2 souls from different worlds, now forever connected. The sky above. As the train pulled away, Eli looked out the window, waving back at Langford who stood on the platform, hands in pockets, pride in his eyes. This wasn't a goodbye. It was a beginning. Eli opened his journal and wrote, "I used to be invisible. Now I see myself. And the world sees me too. From a homeless boy with nothing. To a voice that changed lives, from don't eat that. To don't give up." This was never just about saving a meal, it was about saving each other, and proving that even the small